Marcus and Tanya Johnson walked hand in hand into Riverdale Community Bank on a bright Tuesday morning. They were full of hope. After 5 years of running their catering business from their small kitchen, they were ready to expand. Their food had become popular at local events, and they needed a loan to open a proper kitchen space. Marcus wore his best suit, the one he saved for special occasions. Tanya had prepared a folder with their business plan, tax returns for the past 3 years, and proof of their excellent credit scores. They had done their homework and knew they were good candidates for a loan. The bank's interior was cool and quiet. Polished floors reflected the overhead lights, and the smell of coffee drifted from a small area in the corner where customers could help themselves while waiting. A young woman at the front desk smiled at them. "We have an appointment with Mr. Winters at 10:30, Marcus said, his voice confident despite the nerves he felt inside. "Of course, Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. Please take a seat, and I'll let him know you're here." They waited for 15 minutes, watching as other customers came and went. A white couple emerged from Winter's office, smiling and shaking his hand. "Congratulations on your loan approval," they heard him say. "You'll be in your new home before you know it." When Richard Winters finally called them in, his smile didn't reach his eyes. He didn't stand to greet them or offer a handshake. Instead, he gestured to the chairs across from his large desk and immediately asked for their paperwork. "So, you want money for a catering business?" he asked, not looking up as he flipped through their carefully prepared documents. "Yes, sir," Tanya replied. "We've been operating for 5 years now, and we've outgrown our current setup. We have the opportunity to lease a commercial kitchen space that would allow us to take on more clients and hire 2 employees." Winters hardly seemed to listen. He frowned at their paperwork, making small sounds that grew more disapproving with each page he turned. "Your profit margins seem thin," he commented. "Actually," Marcus began, "if you look at page 4, you'll see that our profit has increased by 15% each year. The projection's 4. Yes, Winters cut him off. "But catering is a risky business. Very seasonal. High failure rate." The meeting continued this way for another 20 minutes. Every positive point the Johnsons tried to highlight was met with doubt. When they mentioned their regular contracts with 3 local businesses for weekly lunch deliveries, Winters questioned how long those would last. When they showed him their savings, which they planned to use alongside the loan, he suggested it wasn't enough of a safety net. Other customers who came into the bank greeted Winters warmly, and he responded with friendly waves and smiles. But with the Johnsons, his tone remained cold and dismissive. "I'll need to review this further," he said finally, closing their folder. "But I should tell you that we've been tightening our lending policies lately. Don't get your hopes up." As they left his office, Marcus noticed something odd. On Winter's desk was another loan application with a bright green 8p per UVD stamp on it. The numbers visible on that form showed a business with less history and lower profits than theirs. The Johnsons drove home in silence, both feeling the same thing. This wasn't about their business plan or credit score. Something else was happening, and they both knew what it was. "This isn't over," Tanya said finally, reaching for Marcus's hand. "Not by a long shot." She had no idea how right she was. The rejection letter arrived exactly 1 week later. Marcus collected it from their mailbox and brought it inside where Tanya was preparing lunch. His face told her everything before he even opened the envelope. "We regret to inform you that your loan application has been denied at this time," Marcus read aloud, his voice flat. The letter listed vague reasons: insufficient business stability and market risk factors. Tanya put down the knife she was using to cut vegetables. "That's nonsense. We've been stable for 5 years, even through the pandemic." That evening, they sat at their kitchen table with laptops open, searching for other banks. But something kept bothering Marcus. He opened a spreadsheet where he tracked all their business finances. "Look at these numbers, Tanya. There's no reason for rejection. None." The next day, Marcus called his old college roommate, Derek, who worked at a different bank across town. "Can you look at our application, just to give us an honest opinion?" Marcus asked. 3 days later, they met Derek at a coffee shop. He pushed their documents back across the table with a confused expression. "This is a solid application," he said. "Honestly, at my bank, this would be approved without question. You got great credit, steady growth, and a clear expansion plan. Something's not right." On the drive home, Tanya was quiet, thinking. Then she suddenly said, "Remember Sarah and Michael from church? They mentioned having trouble with a loan at Riverdale, too." The Johnsons started asking around. First within their church, then among business owners they knew from the local Black Business Association. A pattern quickly emerged. Over coffee, lunch meetings, and phone calls, they heard the same story repeatedly. "Riverdale turned us down, too." Winters was so dismissive. "We ended up going to a bank in the next county." Marcus started keeping notes. Within 2 weeks, he had documented 12 cases of Black business owners or home buyers being rejected by Riverdale Bank under questionable circumstances. Most disturbing was that several white business owners with similar or even weaker finances reported easy approvals from the same bank. Tanya, using her skills from her paralegal days, requested public information about Riverdale's lending practices. The data showed clear disparities. Loan approval rates in predominantly white neighborhoods were nearly 80%, while approvals in Black neighborhoods hovered around 30%. "This isn't just about us," Marcus said one night as they reviewed their findings. "This is systematic." They decided to attend a community meeting where banking issues were being discussed. The room was packed with local business owners and residents. When the topic of banking came up, Marcus raised his hand. "Has anyone else had issues getting loans approved at Riverdale Community Bank?" he asked. Nearly a third of the room raised their hands. The meeting moderator, a city council member named Patricia Williams, asked Marcus to elaborate. He shared their experience briefly, and others began to speak up with similar stories. After the meeting, Patricia approached them. "This is serious," she said. "I've been hearing complaints about Riverdale for years, but seeing all these people in one room, this is evidence we can't ignore." She introduced them to James Teller, a successful real estate developer and one of the few Black banking executives in the state who had recently retired. "What Riverdale is doing is called redlining," James explained. "It's illegal, but hard to prove in individual cases. They're careful to always have a seemingly valid reason for rejection." As they were leaving, James pulled them aside. "Filing complaints is one option, but those investigations take years. I have another idea, if you're interested." "What's that?" Tanya asked. James smiled slightly. "I hear Riverdale's parent company is looking to sell off some of their smaller branches, including yours." Marcus and Tanya had exchanged glances as understanding dawned. "Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting?" Marcus asked. "Sometimes," James said, "the best way to change a system is from the inside. Let me make some calls." 2 weeks after meeting James Teller, Marcus and Tanya hosted a small gathering in their living room. 6 people sat around their coffee table: James, Patricia from the city council, Dr. Lisa Brown, who owned 3 dental clinics, Anthony Perkins, who ran a successful construction company, and Maya Wilson, a retired attorney who specialized in discrimination cases. "Thank you all for coming," Marcus said, handing out folders. "Inside is everything we've gathered about Riverdale's lending practices." The group reviewed the documents silently. Charts showed clear patterns of discrimination. Testimonials from rejected applicants painted a consistent picture of bias. "This would make a strong discrimination case," Maya said, tapping the folder. "But lawsuits take years, and banks have big legal teams." "And even if we win," Anthony added, "they pay a fine and continue business as usual. Nothing really changes." James nodded. "That's why I suggested a different approach." He pulled out a newspaper clipping. "Midwest Banking Corporation is selling off several smaller branches, including Riverdale Community Bank." A heavy silence filled the room as everyone understood what he was suggesting. "Buy a bank?" Tanya asked. "Is that even possible for people like us?" "People like us?" James smiled. "You mean successful Black professionals with good credit, business experience, and community connections? Yes, it's possible." He explained the process. They would form an investment group, secure financing, and make an offer to purchase the branch. It would require a significant investment from each of them, but it was doable. "The branch is valued at approximately $4.2 million, James said. "If each person in this room can invest or raise $300,000, that's nearly half. We can secure loans for the rest." Dr. Brown leaned forward. "I've always wanted to put my money into something that creates real change. Count me in." One by one, They all agreed. Patricia suggested other potential investors from the community who might join them. Anthony knew several successful contractors who had faced similar discrimination. Maya, the attorney, raised a practical concern. We need to keep this quiet. If Winters or the current management learns about our plan, they could try to block the sale. They decided to form a company called Unity Financial Group for the purchase. No one's personal name would appear in the official documents until necessary. James would be their main representative in the negotiations, as his banking background made him a natural fit. The next month was a whirlwind of activity. Marcus and Tanya worked night and day contacting potential investors while continuing to run their catering business. They secured commitments from 15 investors in total, each contributing between $50,000 and $500,000. James arranged meetings with financial advisors and lawyers who specialized in bank acquisitions. They prepared detailed business plans showing how they would make the bank profitable while serving the entire community fairly. The key, James explained during one late-night planning session, is to show that our approach isn't just morally right, it's good business. There's untapped potential in these underserved neighborhoods. Marcus stayed up late creating financial projections. Tanya worked on community outreach plans. Their dining table disappeared under stacks of papers and open laptops. One evening, after everyone had left, Tanya found Marcus staring at Riverdale's rejection letter, which he had framed and hung on the wall of their home office. "Funny how things work out," he said. "If Winters had just treated us fairly, none of this would be happening." Tanya smiled and put her arms around his shoulders. "Sometimes the best thing that happens to you is not getting what you thought you wanted." 2 months after their first meeting, Unity Financial Group was officially formed. They hired a respected banking consultant to advise them and submitted their letter of intent to purchase Riverdale Community Bank. The game was now in motion, and Richard Winters had no idea what was coming. The news broke on a Monday morning. The front page of the local business section read, "Midwest Banking Corporation to sell 5 local branches." Riverdale Community Bank was third on the list. Marcus nearly spilled his coffee when he saw the paper. He immediately called James Teller. "Have you seen the news?" Marcus asked. "It's official now." "I saw it," James replied. "This is moving faster than expected. We need to meet tonight." By 7 that evening, the core members of Unity Financial Group gathered in Dr. Brown's conference room. James stood at the whiteboard with the newspaper article pinned up. "This changes our timeline," he explained. "The good news is that it's now public knowledge that the branch is for sale. The bad news is that other buyers will be interested too." Anthony leaned forward in his chair. "Who else would want to buy a small branch like Riverdale?" "Other banks looking to expand," James answered. "Private investors. Maybe even some predatory lenders who see an opportunity to move into the neighborhood." The thought of Riverdale falling into even worse hands made everyone uncomfortable. "So what do we do?" Tanya asked. "We move quickly," Maya said, "before others can organize their bids." James nodded and wrote next step S on the whiteboard. Under it, he listed 1. Complete our financing. 2. Submit formal offer. 3. Meet with Midwest banking executives. Patricia, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "I have some news that might help us. The City Council is working on a new community reinvestment initiative. Banks that show commitment to fair lending in underserved areas will get preference for city accounts." "That's perfect," Marcus said. "We can include that in our proposal. Our plan to provide fair loans in all neighborhoods would qualify us for those city accounts." The group worked late into the night, refining their offer. Dr. Brown called her financial advisor to liquidate some investments. Anthony reached out to 2 more potential investors who had been on the fence. The next morning, Tanya took a bold step. She drove to Riverdale Bank and asked to speak with someone about their business accounts. Instead of meeting with Winters, she was introduced to Sarah Jenkins, a senior account manager. "I'm exploring banking options for our catering business," Tanya had explained, careful not to reveal too much. "I'd be happy to help," Sarah said. During their conversation, Tanya casually asked about the news of the branch being sold. Sarah sighed. "Yes, it's true. Most of us just found out ourselves. Everyone's worried about their jobs." "Do you know who might buy it?" Tanya asked innocently. "No idea. Mr. Winters seems confident it will be another bank, and that his position is secure. Sarah lowered her voice. Between us, many of us wouldn't mind new management. There are practices here that some of us don't agree with. Tanya returned to Marcus with valuable information. The employees are worried about their jobs, and it sounds like not everyone supports Winter's approach to lending. This gave Marcus an idea. That afternoon, he drafted a section for their proposal that addressed staff retention. "We'll keep good employees who believe in fair banking," he told the group. "This isn't just about replacing Winters. It's about creating a better bank for everyone." 3 days later, their financing was secured. Unity Financial Group had raised $2.1 million from their investors. First National Bank of Springfield approved their loan for the remaining amount needed. James made the call to Midwest Banking Corporation. "This is James Teller of Unity Financial Group. We'd like to submit a formal offer to purchase Riverdale Community Bank." The representative sounded surprised by their quick response. "That's unusually fast, Mr. Teller. The sale was just announced." James smiled into the phone. "We believe in being prepared. When can we meet to discuss our offer?" The meeting was set for the following Monday. The first real test of their plan was about to begin. Marcus and Tanya arrived at Midwest Banking Corporation's regional headquarters 15 minutes early. The tall glass building reflected the morning sun as they walked through the revolving doors. James Teller and Maya Wilson were already waiting in the lobby. "Ready for this?" James asked, straightening his tie. Marcus nodded, patting his briefcase. "As ready as we'll ever be." A receptionist led them to a large conference room on the 12th floor. 5 people sat on one side of a long table, 3 men and 2 women in expensive suits. The nameplate in front of the man in the center read Edward Phillips, Regional Director. "Welcome," Phillips said without standing. "I understand you're interested in acquiring our Riverdale branch." James took the lead. "Yes, Mr. Phillips. We represent Unity Financial Group, a local investment coalition interested in transforming Riverdale into a community-focused bank." For the next hour, they presented their offer. James explained their financing. Maya covered the legal aspects. Tanya outlined their community engagement plans. Marcus presented their business model and growth projections. The Midwest executives listened with neutral expressions. Then Phillips leaned forward. "Your offer is interesting," he said. "But frankly, we have concerns about your group's experience in banking operations." "I spent 27 years in banking," James replied calmly, "including as vice president at First State Bank." "Yes, but the rest of your team?" Phillips glanced at his notes. "A caterer, a lawyer, a dentist, and various other business owners. Banking is a specialized field." Marcus felt his temper rising but kept his voice steady. "Each investor brings valuable expertise. Dr. Brown understands healthcare financing. Anthony Perkins knows construction loans inside out. My background is in financial analysis. Together, we have more diverse experience than most banking teams." Phillips didn't look convinced. "We have other interested parties with established banking credentials." "Do they have our community connections?" Tanya asked. "Do they understand the needs of all the neighborhoods this branch serves?" The meeting continued with tough questions from both sides. After 2 hours, Phillips stood up. "We'll consider your proposal and get back to you within 2 weeks." As they were gathering their materials, the door opened. Richard Winters walked in with another man. "Sorry I'm late," Winters said to Phillips. "Traffic was terrible." He froze when he saw Marcus and Tanya. Recognition flashed across his face. "What are they doing here?" he asked Phillips. "Unity Financial Group is interested in purchasing your branch," Phillips explained. Winters laughed. "Them? Buy a bank? That's ridiculous." The room fell silent. Phillips looked uncomfortable. "And why is that ridiculous, Mr. Winters?" Maya asked, her attorney voice in full effect. "Well, I mean," Winters stumbled. "Banking requires certain qualifications, experience, understanding of risk management. Like the risk management that led to your branch's 30% loan approval rate in predominantly black neighborhoods versus 80% in white areas." Marcus asked quietly. Winters' face reddened. "Those numbers are taken out of context. Different neighborhoods have different risk profiles." "We have extensive documentation suggesting otherwise," Maya replied. Phillips cleared his throat. Mr. Winters, I think we should continue this discussion privately. As they left the room, Tanya heard Winters say, "You can't seriously consider selling to their kind. They have no idea how to run a bank." Outside the building, the group was quiet until they reached the parking lot. "That could have gone better," Marcus said. James shook his head. "Actually, it went perfectly. Winters just revealed his true colors in front of his bosses. And did you see Philip's face? He was embarrassed." "But will they sell to us?" Tanya asked. "They might not want to," Maya said with a small smile, "but after Winters' performance, declining our offer could look like they support his views. I think our chances just improved." Marcus took Tanya's hand as they walked to their car. One way or another, things are going to change at Riverdale Bank. 2 weeks passed with no word from Midwest Banking Corporation. Then 3 weeks. The waiting was hard on everyone, especially Marcus and Tanya. Their catering business needed attention, but their minds were on the bank purchase. No news could be good news, James told them during their weekly meeting. They're probably considering multiple offers. On the morning of the 30th day, Marcus' phone rang. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number. "Hello, Mr. Johnson. This is Edward Phillips from Midwest Banking." Marcus' heart pounded as he put the call on speaker so Tanya could hear. "Yes, Mr. Phillips. What can I do for you?" "I'm calling to discuss your offer for Riverdale branch," Phillips said, his voice formal. "After careful consideration, we'd like to move forward with Unity Financial Group's proposal." The words hung in the air for a moment before Tanya gasped. Marcus struggled to keep his voice steady. "That's excellent news, Mr. Phillips. May I ask what influenced your decision?" There was a slight pause. "Your group presented the most comprehensive community development plan, and frankly, some concerns were raised about the current management's lending practices that align with issues your group identified." After the call ended, Marcus and Tanya hugged each other tightly. Years of frustration and months of hard work had led to this moment. They immediately called the other investors with the news. The next 6 weeks were filled with paperwork, meetings, and planning. They worked with banking regulators to ensure all requirements were met. They spoke with financial analysts about the transition. They hired consultants to help them set up new systems and policies. Maya handled the legal documents, reviewing every line of the purchase agreement. Anthony began planning renovations for the building. Dr. Brown developed health benefits packages for the staff they would retain. Through it all, they kept the identity of the new owner secret from the current bank employees. Only Phillips and the top executives at Midwest knew who was buying the branch. On the day of closing, Marcus, Tanya, James, and Maya met Phillips in the conference room again. This time, the atmosphere was different. Phillips seemed more relaxed, even friendly. "I want you to know," he said quietly before the others arrived, "that your group's presentation opened our eyes to some serious issues. We're conducting a full review of all our branch's lending practices." The signing took less than an hour. Papers were passed around, signatures were added, and handshakes were exchanged. Finally, Phillips handed James a small box. "The keys to your bank," he said. "Congratulations." They had agreed that James, as their most experienced banker, would handle the transition announcement to the staff. That afternoon, all Riverdale employees were called to a meeting in the main lobby after closing time. Richard Winters stood at the front, looking annoyed. "All right, everyone. As you know, our branch has been sold. Mr. James Teller from the new ownership group will explain what this means for you." James walked to the center of the room. "Thank you, Mr. Winters. I'm James Teller, representing Unity Financial Group. Starting tomorrow, this branch will be known as Unity Community Bank." He explained their vision of fair banking practices and community investment. Most employees looked relieved, even excited by the plans. "Will there be staff changes?" someone asked. "We plan to retain most positions," James replied, "with a few exceptions." All eyes turned to Winters, who was frowning. "Mr. Winters," James said, "there are 2 people who would like to speak with you in your office." Winters walked to his office, still unaware of what was happening. When he opened the door, Marcus and Tanya were waiting inside. "You," Winters said, his face going pale. "What are you doing here?" "Hello, Mr. Winters," Marcus said calmly. We wanted to personally inform you that your services will no longer be needed at this bank. Effective immediately, Tanya added. But you can't. Winters stammered. Actually, we can, Marcus said. We own the bank now. The morning after the acquisition, Marcus and Tanya arrived at Unity Community Bank an hour before opening. They stood outside, looking at the building that had once rejected them but was now theirs. Workers were already removing the old Riverdale signs and installing new ones with the Unity logo. I still can't believe we did it, Tanya said, squeezing Marcus's hand. Inside, they found the staff gathered in the lobby, looking nervous and excited. James was introducing Sarah Jenkins, the account manager who had helped Tanya during her undercover visit. Everyone, meet Sarah, our new branch manager, James announced. Sarah looked surprised. Me? But I'd never been in management. You have integrity and understand fair banking practices, James explained. That's more important than a title. The first week was busy and challenging. Some customers were confused by the change. A few older clients, mostly white, moved their accounts when they realized the bank had new black owners. But for each account lost, 3 new ones were opened. Marcus and Tanya set up an office in what had been Winter's large corner room. They divided it into 2 spaces, one for bank business and one for community outreach. They replaced Winter's large mahogany desk with a simple table where people could sit together comfortably. No more talking down to customers from behind a big desk, Marcus said as the old furniture was removed. By the end of the first month, Unity had made significant changes. They simplified the loan application process and created clear, fair criteria for approvals. They'd hired 2 new loan officers from the neighborhoods they served. They started free financial education classes in the community room they created from unused storage space. The most meaningful change came in their lending practices. In the first quarter under new ownership, loan approvals in black neighborhoods jumped from 30% to 72%. But they weren't just saying yes to everyone. They were using truly fair risk assessments. Good banking isn't about saying yes to everyone, James explained to the staff during training. It's about giving everyone a fair chance based on real factors, not assumptions. Word spread quickly through the community. Small business owners who had been rejected by Riverdale came back to try again. First-time home buyers who had given up hope found support at Unity. Marcus and Tanya's catering business also flourished with proper financing. They hired 4 employees and moved into the commercial kitchen space they had originally wanted. Their success became a powerful example for new loan applicants. If you doubt what a small business loan can do, look at Taste of Joy Catering, loan officers would tell hesitant entrepreneurs. The owners of this bank started just like you. 6 months after taking over, Unity Community Bank hosted an open house. The lobby was filled with local business owners, community leaders, and customers. The walls displayed before and after photos of businesses that had received loans from Unity. Patricia Williams, now running for mayor, gave a short speech. What's happening here is more than banking. It's economic justice in action. Dr. Brown showed charts comparing lending statistics before and after the change in ownership. The numbers told a powerful story of transformation. Anthony Perkins brought his entire construction crew to open accounts. My workers used to cash their checks at expensive check cashing places, he explained. Now they have real bank accounts with no hidden fees. As the event ended, an elderly woman approached Marcus and Tanya. I've banked here for 40 years, she said. I was worried when I heard about new owners, but I've never seen this place so alive. For the first time, it feels like everyone is welcome here. That night, after everyone had gone home, Marcus and Tanya sat in their office looking at the day's photographs. We didn't just buy a bank, Tanya said softly. We changed what a bank can be. Marcus nodded. And we're just getting started. 2 years passed since Unity Community Bank opened its doors. What had started as a response to discrimination had grown into something much bigger. The single branch had expanded to 3 locations, all serving previously underbanked neighborhoods. On a crisp fall morning, Marcus walked through the main branch, greeting employees by name. The bank looked different now. The walls featured artwork from local artists. The teller stations were open and welcoming, not hidden behind thick glass. A play area for children sat in one corner, so parents could bank without worries. Mr. Johnson called Sarah Jenkins, now the senior branch manager for all locations. The quarterly reports are ready for review. Marcus nodded. I'll look at them with Tanya this afternoon. The reports told an impressive story. Unity's loan default rate was actually lower than the industry average, proving that their fair lending approach was also good business. Their customer base had grown by 340% in 2 years. Most importantly, small business loans in previously redlined areas had created over 200 new jobs in the community. While Marcus was reviewing the numbers in his office, Tanya knocked on his door. You need to see this, she said, placing a loan application on his desk. Marcus looked at the name and froze. Richard Winters? Is this real? Tanya nodded. He came in this morning. Sarah called me immediately. According to the application, Richard Winters wanted a loan to start a small consulting business. He had been unable to find banking work after leaving Riverdale. His savings were nearly gone. What do you think? Tanya asked. Marcus studied the application carefully. His numbers actually look solid. Low debt, clear business plan, reasonable request. So what should we do? Tanya asked, though she already knew the answer. That afternoon, Richard Winters sat nervously in a small meeting room. He looked older, his expensive suit replaced by a more modest outfit. When Marcus and Tanya walked in, his face flushed with embarrassment. Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, he said quietly. I didn't realize you would be handling my application personally. We review all special cases, Marcus said, keeping his voice neutral. Winters looked down at his hands. I understand if you want to reject this immediately, after how I treated you. Actually, Tanya said, sliding a folder across the table, your application has been approved. Winters looked up in shock. Approved? But why would you help me after what I did? We're not helping you because of what you did, Marcus explained. We're helping you despite what you did. That's the difference between your banking and ours. I don't understand, Winters said. When you rejected us, Tanya said, it wasn't based on our qualifications. It was based on who we were. We're approving you based on your qualifications, regardless of who you are or what you did in the past. Winters was silent for a long moment. I've had a lot of time to think about my actions, he finally said. Seeing what you built here, how you've helped the community. I was wrong, not just about you, but about everything. They discussed the terms of his loan, which were fair but not special. As Winters signed the final papers, he looked up with tears in his eyes. Thank you for this second chance, he said. Not many people would have given it. After he left, Marcus and Tanya walked through the busy lobby. Customers of all races and backgrounds were being served with equal respect. Loan officers sat with applicants at small tables, explaining options clearly without talking down to anyone. Outside, they paused to look at the Unity Community Bank sign shining in the afternoon sun. When we first came to Riverdale for that loan, Marcus said, did you ever imagine we'd end up here? Tanya smiled. Not in my wildest dreams. But now I can't imagine it any other way. A young couple walked past them into the bank, looking nervous and hopeful, much like Marcus and Tanya had been 2 years ago. Through the window, they watched as the couple was greeted with warm smiles and shown to a comfortable seating area. Full circle, Marcus whispered, taking Tanya's hand. No, Tanya corrected him gently. The circle keeps growing. This is just the beginning.